Hi everyone, my name's Mike and welcome to the video. In this video we're making a welcome return to classic bikes, specifically a 1961 Ariel Leader. Some of you may not have even heard of an Ariel Leader, but it's a 250cc two-stroke twin, quite a radical bike at the time, and this is one of Stewarts' bikes. He's newly acquired it. As you may know, he already has a square four that he has jointly with his father, so I think Stu's becoming quietly a bit of an Ariel nut, so we may see some more Ariels appearing. So what I've tried to do with this video is, because it's new to Stu, because he hasn't had a lot of time to kind of debug it and go through it, we did have a couple of issues with it on the day. So I thought, that's classic bike ownership. So I've included a warts and all. So instead of trying to edit out all the bits that didn't go so well, I've left them in, you know. So it's all part of the ownership experience. And when it comes to my ride, I make a complete cat's backside out of riding the bike. Just shocking. But anyway, I've left that in too, so hopefully you'll find that a bit amusing. But yeah, it was great fun. It's a jolly bike, and we have a chat afterwards. We were lucky enough to be allowed to film at the Old Stores Cafe, which is a cafe in North Wales, in between Mold and Wrexham. For any locals, it's on the road that's going up towards the Ponderosa, so well worth dropping in. It's yeah, it's an excellent place, and I've done a bit of filming in there as well. So coming up, we have I'm in negotiation with the owner for future video, and I think we're going to be doing a Norton International, which is overhead cam 500cc Norton in a featherbed frame from the 50s, and we're also putting that up against a 500cc Vincent Comet, so that should be really good. We're really looking forward to that. We haven't had the best summer here, so that's why we haven't had many videos out. I know other people who may be viewing this have had the opposite. You've had extreme heat, extreme weather, so our sympathy and support goes out to you guys that have done it tough this year. We've had a very wet summer, but I know you guys have had it tough, so our thoughts go to you guys. So as always, thank you very much for your ongoing support, and if you like what we're doing, please give us a like and subscribe, and with that, on with the show.
On it again. Yeah, it's just horrible. Nasty wiring. But can't. And Stu thought it might be the brake light, but that would be after the ignition switch. So yeah. That's kind of.
So it's before the ignition switch.
So it's on this blue, this brown blue, and it will be going forward on this main loom. No sign of overheating on this loom anywhere other than right on the battery. The thing is, you've got all this pressed steel.
So this is my go on it, and it does feel a bit alien. The front brake barely works, so you're just using the back brake, and the gears are on the right hand side and one up, the rest down, so i.e. the opposite of what you know. So it's a bit like patting your tummy and patting it, you know, doing the circular on your head at the same time. So you hear I'm starting to mess the gear changes up. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just making a right dog's breakfast out of it. So I don't know what gear I'm in. This is the most busy intersection on the whole run. So I'm trying to get it into, oh, and I've stalled it now. So I'll try and get it into neutral, which I think I've got it into neutral. Then start it up again.
Yeah.
It starts really nicely actually. Look at that, first kick, not a problem. Put it into first. Wait for a break in the traffic. And off we go. Oh no, we don't. I've got it into second. So now I'm slipping the clutch, and I'm just, my head's completely gone. I've put it into third now, so back down into second, and now I start slipping the clutch. So I did confess to Stu that, there, listen to it there. So I confessed to Stu that I did slip the clutch of the bike, but now it's kind of all sorted itself out, and actually rides really nicely. It hasn't got a great amount of power. It's probably about the same as a 125 scooter in terms of modern standards, but the handling on it's really stable. With the very solid frame and the trailing links, or leading link front forks, I think they are. You don't get much dive, and it pops along really well. It's what my dad would have called a jolly bike. The wind protection's really good with that big screen. It feels very close to you when you're on it there. You can probably see it here. So I'm coming up to a roundabout and I'm thinking, please don't let there be a car on here. And of course there's a car on there, so I'm expecting to mess the gears up. But no, I think I've got the hang of the gears now. And it's great. It rides beautifully. I'd love a longer go on it, which I'm sure I'll get when all the electric's sorted. But no, I really enjoyed it, and yeah, great fun. Hi everyone, welcome to the video. Today we're at the Old Stores Cafe, which is a motorcycling cafe in Pontblyven, which is about 3 miles out of Mould, and it's on the way up to the Ponderosa, so it's all in the same sort of area. Great place. It's set up as a motorcycling, it's kind of semi-museum, but it's full of memorabilia, and it's great. The food's great, really nice people here. So yeah. But the real reason we're here is today we've been out testing Stu's new bike.
Which is new to me.
New to you. So tell us about it.
So it's a 1961 Ariel Leader, which is a 250 two-stroke twin. Just a little bit of a potted history. Ariel were taken over by BSA, and I think it was in 51 that Triumph joined the group, and then they decided they were dropping all their four-stroke models, which was
from the Ariel line.
Yeah, from the Ariel line. So that was like
Huntmaster,
Hunter,
Red Hunter, I think it was.
Square 4.
Yeah, and the Square 4. So they decided they wanted to come up with something a little bit more radical. So I think it was Val Page and
you mentioned him earlier. I can't remember his name.
Edward Turner?
No, it wasn't Edward Turner.
Edward Turner wasn't involved, but what they came up with was they came up with a 250 twin, and it had a pressed steel frame. The engine was slung from underneath the frame, so all the mountings, which were rubber mountings, which was a bit like the Norton. And the radical thing was it was fully fared in. So all the engine is compartments are all covered.
So with like the Triumph, the bathtubs a bit
bathtubs,
like that as well?
I mean that was one of Edward Turner's little...
Exactly. So it must have been sort of a little bit of influence.
So that was the fashion at the time, was to try and enclose.
It was a fashion. I think Edward Turner was sort of the driving force from a Triumph group point of view. But it was that idea of making bikes cleaner. Streamlining was a new science, wasn't it? Relatively, and it was an idea of making the bikes cleaner and less
less mechanical stuff on display and sort
And
of.
funnily enough, there's a little poster about
yeah.
John and Dave
Yes,
there talking about a 200cc area,
Yeah,
whereas
well,
yours is
yeah.
250.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the leader came out with all these. It had lots of optional extras. The one that you'll see on the video has actually got indicators as an optional extra. There was an 8-day clock, which I think was originally taken from the
Square 4.
The Square 4. You could have panniers to go with it. The one that you'll see in the video is red and cream, but they were all either, what did I say it was?
Cherokee red.
Cherokee red or Oriental blue. And then all
It's
the
not
other,
that pale blue.
yeah.
By the Austin Metropolitan.
Yeah, kind of
That's
colour.
it,
Yeah.
But the rest should be grey, whereas you'll see that one is actually
Yeah.
cream. So everything was grey. One was blue, one was red. That was the choice. You had trailer link front forks.
And how much was it, Stuart? If I wanted to buy one,
It was they were £168 plus some form of tax,
which was a lot of
about
money in those
£200.
days.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to compare. I don't know what. I've no idea, but it'd be interesting to compare what, say, a Beezer Bantam,
Yeah.
which would have been your
Yeah.
utilitarian
Yeah.
ride to work 2-stroke, other
Yeah.
than. And that's a lot more advanced than the Beezer. You know, the Beezer would have been cheap to make.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't. It was war reparations for the engine design, conventional tube.
DKW,
Yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah.
conventional tubing, all that. The tooling costs for the Ariel leader must have been quite heavy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Beezer owned their own presses and everything, but the tooling costs must have been significant.
Yeah, well, they had the Arrow as well, didn't they? Which was the
Well, that was
smallest
later,
model.
so-
What happened was that this 250 came out with the idea that they were going to sort of
Close.
convert. So if I said to you, you know, this bike is trailer in front forks, pressed steel frame, tank under the seat, and a little compartment, you'd say Honda 90, wouldn't you? You know,
Or a scooter, or a Vespa, or a
yeah.
Bretta.
So that's the sort of thing that.
Well, what was interesting is when I've pulled up, because I was a bit later than the other guys, and
Unusual.
it is unusual. Usually it's other people. Anyway, I digress. When I first pulled up, there were about 10 scooters, Vespas and Lambrettas, and they'd all surrounded Stu's bike.
yeah.
And at first glimpse, it looked like a scooter.
Yeah, you walked right past it, didn't you?
I walked right past it.
And I suppose that is the design as well.
It
because
was certainly a
scooters are
design influence, wasn't
It's
it?
very Italian,
Yeah.
that kind of, and that's what
However,
this is
I
a
was
bit
thinking
like.
when I was riding up, I was sort of nodding to other bikers, not getting a response, and I thought, to the untrained eye, this looks like a scooter.
Yeah.
Now, why? Because it's fared in, it's got a screen, you know, your hands are protected. And then I thought, well, if you walked around a modern
Bike
showroom
park, yeah.
now and looked at the adventure tourers with their screens and their leg shields, and really it's got to
swung
that
back,
point.
And what you haven't mentioned, Stuart, is the trail of blue smoke that you left behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why you walked past it. You
Yes.
couldn't actually see
It's
it.
it's a little bit like you know, when you can track somebody on a phone, which is modern technology. In them days, it was just like a train.
Follow the smell, find my friends by the smell.
So presumably, Stu, it's a petrol oil mix. What ratio do you know?
I think it should be 33 to 1 or 35
Because my
to
MZ
1.
now is 50 to 1, whereas earlier on they were 33 to 1.
I think
Modern
50 to 1
oils,
is too
It
much.
does smoke a lot more than your MZ, a lot more.
Yeah.
Is it?
The thing I really liked on yours though, Stu, was that gauge that kind of flex like this.
No,
all
let's
the time.
not go there.
Yeah,
So
so
we have had
You
some.
mean
We're
the
talking about the cost.
diameter,
yeah.
We're talking about the cost of it, and it must have been quite an expensive bike and a niche market, as you're saying.
Yeah.
So hence they went on to make the Arrow to widen the market
Yeah.
to wild-eyed 17-year-olds and stuff of the day. I'm guessing.
They're
And
actually,
that's the advert that Richard
yeah,
was pointing
the Arrow is quite a capable bike.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Mike Hose who's he does
Lots
a
of
lot
classic
racing. He does the pre-TT classics, and he absolutely cleans up against the Suzuki Hustlers, the YZ, Yamahas on a very tuned Ariel.
to sort of
Arrow.
put that into perspective, they obviously tried, when it came out, they obviously tried to sort of make it a bit more glamorous. They had one entered in the 1960 lightweight TT. Obviously they were modified. That came 7th. an average speed of an 80 mile an hour lap.
Wow.
Yeah,
Which is not too bad.
that's
And Sammy Miller had quite a close relationship with Ariel, obviously the 6-day trials.
Yeah.
And he modified one and nearly rode it to the top of Ben Nevis. So they were obviously trying to show that it was capable.
Yeah.
But I just don't
Absolutely.
think I don't think people bought into it. I think it was a little bit.
Probably fell between two stools, didn't it? Because
Yeah.
it was faster than your LE Velocets and your scooters of the time. Because Beezer Group got their fingers burnt with scooters, the Tigris and
Yeah,
can't
they
remember
never
what the
quite-
Beezer Dandy or possibly I don't
Didn't
know.
quite work
My God,
for
it
'em.
didn't work for him. It didn't work for any of the manufacturers
Yeah.
apart from the Italians. But it fell between that stool, very much ride to work, just for that job, and it was obviously faster than those, but a lot more expensive. You look at the bits and pieces on
Yeah,
that one,
the
and you've done some
detailing.
close-ups. There's some lovely detailing on it. There's some very English eccentric detailing. The dip switch is something to write home about,
Yeah,
isn't it?
and I like
it's a
the,
lever that actually moves the
The
headlamp.
indicator's a lever as
And
well.
the indicators are
Nice.
lever.
It's
But-
got indicators.
yeah. So, you know, and Norton at the time were dabbling with stuff like that on the Electra, which was electric start, and I think you could get indicators on that. And it might have been a bit later. But, you know, it all costs money. And you look at things like the chain adjuster's got a little Tommy bar on the
Yeah.
rear spin.
Like-
Like,
like-
But to be
as well.
clear, the dip is actually physically moves
moving the headlight.
the
yeah.
headlight.
Yeah.
It's a mechanical
Yeah.
device, whereas the indicator
And
was
all-
still electric indicators,
and all
but
the-
it's a lever that operated them.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
like and there's like a points on a railway, and then the screen and everything, as you say, was an optional extra. But it was all made, I'm presuming, by Motoplas, who were Beezer's plastics division, and it was a division. They made lots of things for all the Beezer Group stuff, but it's all nicely made stuff.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not cheap, tacky aftermarket stuff.
But
But it wouldn't cost.
It didn't bomb, did it? You said earlier that there were quite tens of thousands made.
Yeah, there's 20,000
Yeah.
made.
So who bought them? Who would it have been? You know, kind of middle management.
Well, one
Would
of the
it-
adverts I've seen is a pilot turning up to a commercial flight on his
Yeah.
So
leader.
professional
Really?
leader.
Yeah, so it's like I can have my what I'm going to go to work in, which is my
Yeah, and you're not going to get oil on it because the chain's fully. Even when they went to the Arrow,
Yeah.
they had the
Turning
fully
up to
enclosed-
fly his Comet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah. So back on 11.
Also, press steel.
Yeah.
Oops.
Funnily enough, I was talking to somebody the other night at my local bike show who's got an Ariel Arrow, and I said, "Oh, Rob, is this an Arrow or is this a leader?" And he says, well, not." There was a sort of crossover points, and his story was in 1961. The leader wasn't selling as well as they'd hoped, so they brought in the Arrow. Now I think there was an overlap, but basically from about 61 they sold a lot more Arrows.
So they sportified it.
Yeah.
So if
And
you
then-
look at, that picture there shows it without all the paraphernalia.
And
that
then
mine's
on
got.
from
Yeah,
that, the
they
golden
removed
arrow,
all the
which was
boxing
even
in.
more tuned. And to your point about who was it selling to, it might have been selling to Comet pilots in 1960
Yeah.
with the optional screen and panniers for his cap. But by 60 something, early 60s, the teenage 250 learner laws in the UK meant it was people like us, but 10 years before,
Yeah.
you know, wanting something a bit sportier.
And that's what I was saying. You could turn up on the Royal Enfield
Enfield Continental
GT. So you got that sitting there in the car
Yeah,
park
with its bacon
next to
slicer
the-
drum brakes.
Yeah, next to the leader, and you're like, which one am I going for? That one. It's
Yeah.
probably cheaper and looks more.
Yeah, your mum and
sport.
dad might be steering you towards the leader on the HP,
Yeah.
but you're going towards that or a Beezer Starfire or something.
So I've ridden it for a little while, and it's quite a nice motor. You
Yeah,
had a
it's
little go
smooth,
at it,
and that'd be the rubber mounting.
Yeah.
It sounds very refined,
So,
isn't it?
so what could you compare it to? Something that maybe the guys watching this channel may have ridden. Would it be like an MZ or a,
LE Velocets.
well, it's a
Well,
four-stroke.
I've never
isn't
ridden
it?
one of
Yeah.
them. In
I
terms
thought
of the
an
enclosure.
LE Velocet was a two-stroke.
No, it's four-stroke. John and I had an
water
LE.
cooled as well.
Let's not get sidetracked by LE Velocets, though. Rich, what I said before you turned up when I rode it, briefly, but it's very refined, and it reminded me of your MZ in that it's not a big slappy peaky two-stroke, it's quite a refined, torquey, smooth two-stroke. Might be smooth just because of the rubber mounting.
Not as powerful as the MZ.
God no, I mean that's for really experienced
It's probably
riders only.
high teens, low 20s, isn't it? That I would imagine. It's saying the top end of 70 mile an hour
Yeah.
and returning 80 to the gallon. So
That's
that's telling
amazing.
me it's in a quite
Yeah, yeah.
like a
Soft
mild
state.
tune.
Yeah, I think-
That's similar to an NZ.
Yeah, I think the golden arrows were good for about 80 out of the
Yeah.
crate. I think, I'm
So
guessing.
they were
So if
high
I'm
state
wrong,
of tune.
if I'm wrong,
And the arrows generally were a high
Yeah.
state of tune,
Yeah.
weren't they?
So
well, they would have weighed less as well, of course, which
Yeah.
would have helped.
The only thing I found with it was that it's got a really it's linked to a Bergman box, which is the same as the
Oh, is it?
square four.
Oh God, that's why it was the wrong way round. the
And you have to. So it's 1 up, 3 down. You have to be really, really
Deliberate.
Deliberate. You have to clutch in. Make sure it is it. And you've got the first 3 gears are fine. But the 4th gear is really, really tall. So
big gap.
we headed up towards the Ponderosa, and there's some hills there. And I realised that if you don't sort of keep
Rev
the
it out,
momentum
yeah.
up, and then to keep the momentum up, you have to carry the corner speed, and then you've got the centre stand. And actually, a side stand was an optional extra, whereas nowadays you can specify
Other way
an
round.
optional
Other way
extra
round,
as
yeah.
a centre stand.
But
So
you
what-
mentioned the handling. Sorry,
Yeah,
Mark,
I
but
was just about to say, what's the
yeah, no,
handling
but
like?
I found it okay. I wasn't going, but I got it up to 40, 45 down the hill, and apart from the front brake, which is lethal, the rear brake's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Lethally bad?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, as opposed to send you over the handlebars into that screen.
Is it
But they
similar to
handle.
the MZ, the front brake?
But it handles. It's probably not quite as good and race bred as the MZ Rich. But the handling's solid, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, a box section, press steel box section frame. God, that's torsionally stiffer, weight for weight, than a
C50.
cradle frame.
Yeah, yeah.
Than a what?
C50.
Yeah, than a wet piece of spaghetti. No, it's got integrity.
I mean-
Hence the 70 mile an hour. Sorry, 80 mile. What was
Funny
that?
enough, this chap I was
70,
talking
yeah,
to the
80
other
mile
night
an
at
hour,
our
yeah.
local bike meeting, who's got this Ariel Arrow, I invited him along today, but he couldn't make it. That would have been an interesting comparison. And he was a bit concerned. He said, going up to North Wales, he said the natural cruising speed on his Arrow, where it's really comfortable and smooth, is 45,
Wow.
50 at a push. So that's a good 10, 15 miles an hour less than my MZ,
Yeah.
which you can cruise nicely at 55, 60, and it's
But
all sweetness.
probably
and
not a lot of drift of a 125 MZ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I had in my head.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. That's what it. 250 MZ's a lot talkier and a lot quicker.
But
So,
then you are
um,
talking 20 years before, aren't you?
yeah, exactly. So, riding. So, I'm yet to ride it. I'm going to ride it home, and I'll give my impressions on that. You two have ridden it.
Yeah.
We have had a little bit of electrical problems with it, but
Joseph Lucas, we've actually had some Joseph Lucas genuine smoke, haven't we?
Yeah, and
But it's been
we've
running
all been
great.
laughing at
But
the
it's-
little key that we.
Have you got the key?
Yeah.
So the key, the Bees of Triumph group, if you bought even the top of the range Bonneville, up until about 1966, I think it was 67, you got a little spade key like that.
That is the key.
Yeah,
Right.
and any screwdriver will work that
Yeah.
switch.
So it's an ignition key or ignition spoon.
But while we were looking at the electrical problems, we were undoing the fasteners that hold all the pressings that stop you getting at anything, and they're all chrome plated. There's no cadmium. It's all chrome plated, proper, really nicely turned screws, and
Yeah.
all the fittings are really first rate.
And that's the original screen. There is a little crack out of one side, and I did notice when we were, because with the filming, you have to sort of turn around in the road unless you can find somewhere suitable. Your hand does go straight to the. There's some little sort of mouldings to protect your hand, but on full lock with my big gloves on. With
But to
all
be
the-
fair, that BMW that I've come on today does that.
Does that, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing you notice when you sat on it, it's quite comfy. I don't think the seat's got quite as much original padding as it would have had, but it's a nice wide seat. It's all very comfy. You've got a very car-like dashboard. That was the other influence.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I think, the Metropolitan, or
Yeah.
it's got car influences, which scooters had. It's got a dashboard. You've got the space for the optional clock. You've got an ignition key. You've got the speedo. You've got the lever for the indicators. A little leak. It's not like that, is it? It's like that. But it's kind of automotive influences
Yeah.
as well.
Everything was space age influenced in those days, late 50s, early
But
60s.
we were just
weren't they?
we were just saying
Streamlined.
that the dip was a physical movement. One of the optional extras was a electronic gear indicator.
No way.
Yeah. So they were dabbling in the sort of tech side, but still going for sort of good old fashioned.
And the other little feature was the parking light.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the
is,
parking lot which pokes out
in the
like
but just above the
demurely from the
dashboard,
bottom of the dashboard, peeking over, going, "Oh, is it my turn to light up yet?"
And I'm also puzzled by the sort
slot.
of slot that's been cut into the fairing. Into
But
the
I remember that being
perspex.
very common in the scooter.
You've got the screen and then what they call it, like a diffuser
presumably
on the top
that's-
with a slot.
Well, you imagine when it's raining and there's all this water
so
on
is
the
it
screen.
the
it'd be-
rain then?
Yeah,
Then you
yeah.
actually see a
Yeah,
clear bit
I think
through.
so.
But I noticed it sort of, I'm riding along and
Yeah.
I'm in a little bit of an airstream. If you just hunker down a
Yeah.
tiny little bit, it just stops.
And people
Yeah.
were a lot smaller in those days, weren't they, Stu?
I'm
And
not sure.
thinner because of the war.
So is that bike pretty original then?
Yeah, it's in need of a sympathetic restoration.
Yeah, except for the wiring.
Yeah, it's
So, Stu, what bike did you exchange for this?
so I tipped in my Fireblade. If you've looked at any of the
Sublime to the ridiculous.
Yeah.
well, yeah, and to be honest, that was part of my rationale. The Fireblade had become ridiculous, really. I did take it out a couple of times before making the final decision, and I just thought it didn't really make sense till I was pushing it hard. And that's like another 100 miles on top of what.
Only-
That's the Fireblade that's got the beer can packing on the rear wheel.
No, it had the original. wheels on it.
That got left in Spain.
Oh, okay.
But only the Lemon Drizzle gang could trade
Yeah.
in a Fireblade
Yeah.
on an Ariel leader.
But Stu's dad, if you've seen our
Ariel Square Four.
70-year-old
Yeah.
man with a
90-year-old
90-year-old
bike with a 70-year-old.
rider, yeah, it's Ariel Square
So
Four.
the other way
That's
round. Other way round,
That's,
yeah.
that's Stu's dad. So Stu's, got another Ariel, and you'll probably get a single, and
And this was the part of it, because I'm in the Ariel Owners Club. We also get in the magazine, which is the Iron Horse magazine, you get all the articles about the Ariel leader. So I thought, well, it's a natural thing to do. It's easier for me dad to start once that Ariel won't start after the third kick. I think he's had enough.
Yeah.
So the idea of the leader, he can get that in and out of the garage on his own. It'll fire up. He can just tootle around the village on it, which is its natural habitat. If I was being perfectly honest, and we've got all the connections for. Why is it doing this? Why is it
The forum and all.
frequently asked questions? The ability to actually get. To be honest, like you were saying, the chrome work on it's quite, the bright work is quite shiny, isn't it?
It's lovely.
So
How many miles it's showing?
26,000.
It's kind of irrelevant when I get to that.
Yeah,
intro, Rich,
but it
'cause
shows that they're a usable bike.
like I say, low state of tune. Probably,
Durable.
Well, when we were guessing how many, we were quite surprised that at 20,000 units, you don't see that many of them around.
No, you
You're
don't.
just saying that you.
and the reason we thought that was probably twofold. Mainly was they were utilitarian bikes, so you're never going to get the collectors, and pressed steel doesn't age well. Rust kills probably kills loads of them. Put under a tarpaulin, forgotten about in the back of a shed.
Yeah.
Take the tarpaulin off. Oh my God, I've got a festering pile of rust on a pressed steel frame.
And they're all hit. That one needs work. You can obviously get better ones, more sorted ones, but they're all around between the £2,000 and £4,000 mark. And that's, like you said, collectability wise, that they're already.
I'd imagine Golden Arrows go for good money.
Yeah.
There we go.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Stu.
Thank you to the old stores.
And thank you to the old stores, indeed.
Yeah,
And drop by if you're in the area.
drop by and try one of these amazing new helmets, full face, all the rage. Flip up the visor.
You could spend a long time walking around looking at all the different memorabilia and.
Looking forward to you taking it out against you when the electrical fault's fixed.
Yes,
we go on the next.
Hopefully the
Lemon
square
Drizzle
ball
Gang
will be the
howl.
same. We can.
I've got some really nice footage of Stu and Dave lying in the middle of the road underneath the
Pulling a piece of
leader,
wire,
going, "This is getting hot."
trying to let the Lucas smoke out.
So I'll include that. All right, thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
everyone. Take care.
Cheers.